Hey guys, welcome to Project Metal Music's YouTube channel with your host El Young, and we are here with Rob from Cyanide. Welcome, Rob.
Hey, what's happening, guys?
So, Rob, could you introduce yourself and what you do?
Yes, my name's Rob Hussey. I am a singer-songwriter for the band Cyanide. Um, I started Cyanide back in 2013, and we put out our first album in 2015, and we're back with a new album now in 2025 called 21 Gun Salute. And it was the album was a labor of love, and I think it's going to appeal to anybody out there who loves that classic sound and production and songwriting from the Dr. Feelgood Metallica Black Album era. Uh, there's a whole lot of influences on this record. There's my Judas Priest, my love of Priest, my love of Maiden, my love of Metallica, Slayer, Anthrax, but also Rat, Van Halen, and Kiss. It's a very diverse record in that sense that it kind of marries the more mainstream thrash with the glam rock of the mid to late '90s.
Oh, cool, cool. So, let's dive into some questions. As a kid, what were you listening to?
Well, I was bothering my dad to get on the turntable, not get on it, but let me use the turntable, show me how to use it from the time I was like 4 years old. And so my dad was, he had a badass stereo system in those days, and I was fascinated with it. And so he did. He showed me how to use the turntable and let me play his records. And so I started with the Beatles and Led Zeppelin, and that was a lot of what my dad would listen to. Although he had a very diverse record collection, but those were the ones I gravitated to just for whatever reason. I really don't even know why. And then when I was 6, I was hanging out with these teenage kids in my neighborhood, and I don't even know why I was allowed to hang out with these teenagers because I was 6 and they were 14, but they introduced me to Kiss, and they had Kiss posters and Kiss albums, and I had never seen anything like that, and I just I asked the dude, what is this? Are those girls? And no, no, they're not. Here it is, and he takes out the Love Gun record and puts it on the turntable and drops the needle, and I Stole Your Love comes on, and that's the first time I hear Kiss, and I'm just spellbound, from that moment on until right up until when Shout at the Devil came out. Um, Only Kiss, if you were talking to me as a kid at that age, all I would talk about is Kiss. My walls were covered with Kiss posters. I listened to my Kiss records every day, and it just kind of went on like that until '83 when Shout at the Devil came out, Peace of Mind came out. A lot of great records came out that year. The first Queensryche EP. There was just so much happening at that time, and then I caught up with Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, and then I start digging into their back catalogs, and I'm just, you know, I couldn't get enough of heavy metal from all those years. I never lost interest in it. In through my 20s, my 30s, it's always been about this music, and I was a drummer for all of those years. Actually, I started playing drums when I was 6 or 7, and I played drums really until I was 40. And then I suddenly realized I had this urge to be a lead singer and wondered if I could pull it off. And I said, well, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. So I got to do it. And so I did. And I started singing for an Iron Maiden tribute band, and that morphed into Cyanide. And now we've got Motley Crue tributes, Poison tribute, still the Iron Maiden, and Cyanide going here in Vegas. And it's just, it's everything I love to sing that I would just be driving around singing in my car anyway. And lucky enough to be able to do that at a pretty high level out here in Vegas.
Cool. Cool. You said that your dad got you sort of like into music, like listening to the Beatles and the Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Was there anybody else who sort of like influenced you to say he's a band, he's this band, he's that band? Was there anybody else got
My
you into listening to music?
Absolutely, my uncle was a guitar player, and he had a band that had a small record deal in the early 70s. They were called Easter Island. They spelled it Eastor. And I was, brought to a few of their rehearsals when I was maybe 5 years old. And so seeing a live rock band and being in the room with it, it really had a huge effect on me. And I liked their music. It wasn't my bag. It was more like it was like a Kansas meets I don't even really know. Kansas meets Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Really good stuff, and I had their tape and I listened to it. And it was my uncle, actually, my uncle Craig, um, who is my dad's brother, who gave me my first guitar when I was 12. And I never did become a great guitar player, but I got good enough on it to figure out how to write songs and, listen to cover or, other songs that already existed and figure out how to play them by ear, because I don't read or write music or anything like that. I just do everything by ear and by feel and what I feel and hear. And I'm going to keep it that way because it seems like it's really working.
Cool. Cool. So out of all the bands that you've listened to over the years, was there any specific person just to actually influence you, or a band or several bands that influenced you to say,
Yeah,
I want to do that. I want to get up on stage and perform.
absolute. I mean, when I first saw Kiss when I was 6, and I saw footage of them live, because at first I only had records, and I couldn't even imagine what a concert looked like at that point. I had never seen them. And so once I saw footage of them on the Love Gun tour, I was like, holy shit, man, I have to do that. And I was just so infatuated with Kiss during those times. So I would say Paul, Gene, Ace, and Peter, they all influenced me musically, visually. Um, and then when Shout at the Devil came out, it was such a funny thing because I didn't get to see Kiss until the Creatures of the Night tour, and they were coming to Vegas for the first time in like 8 years, and I finally get to see Kiss, and I'm pumped. And then I find out, a little bit before the show that Ace is not going to be there. It's going to be this guy named Vinnie Vincent. Saw it in 16 magazine actually, and so you know I really I was so young that I didn't really mind because I was just glad that Kiss was still here. And so I went to that concert, and the day before the concert, my mom was taking me because I was in 5th grade. She says, "Do you want to see the opening band? They're called Motley Crue." And I said, "No, I only care about Kiss. I just want to see Kiss, and I've never heard of those guys, so I don't need to see." Big mistake. Big mistake. This was the Too Fast for Love Motley Crue tour. They're opening for Kiss, I think, for only 3 shows, maybe 7. I can't remember how many it was, but it was just a few shows they opened for Kiss. And I missed them on purpose and walk into the Aladdin Theater where the concert was. And Motley Crue had just finished. There was still smoke in the air, and everybody's wearing Motley Crue shirts. And I'm offended. I'm like, who is this Motley Crue? What don't these people all realize that Kiss is the best band ever? And I was just, it's kind of like, who is this? I need to see who this Motley Crue is. I'm offended. And then when I found out, who they were, and I saw Looks That Kill video on MTV a few months later, and I think I also saw a little bit of Livewire, and I just wanted to beat myself up, like how could I have missed this? This band is amazing. And so to get back to answer your question, from that moment on, it became, I look in the liner notes of the Motley Crue album, see Nikki Sixx is the guy that's writing a lion's share of these songs, and loved these songs so much from the very beginning, the Too Fast and the Shout songs. And so from that moment on, Nikki became my dude. I became infatuated with his songwriting style, his lyric writing style, his overall just level of coolness. Um, and so I became obsessed with Motley Crue, and then Iron Maiden, and then Judas Priest, and Queensryche, and Def Leppard, and Rat, and so many bands. I mean, I loved all of that music, all the heavy stuff and all the glam stuff. I remember being at school and thinking how weird it was that, you know, I guess maybe I showed up to school looking more like I was on the glam side of things, but I still loved Megadeth and Metallica and Slayer. And the dudes that were showing up to school looking like thrash metal dudes really did not like me. To them, I was a poser. And I'm like, well, I just like all the music. I don't differentiate between, it's all metal to me, just different types. And so I was always like that back then. I always wondered why all the thrash people didn't like Motley Crue and why all the Motley Crue people didn't like Metallica. You should just love all this music. And so that's how I always was. And that's why the new record really shows that, because I wanted to make a record where all of that stuff was present.
Cool. Cool. We've got a couple of comments from the chat here. Going back to sort of like talking about like either playing.
Hello.
Hello, Lisa. Lisa says that my mom was the same. She could play by listening to a song.
Yeah, I mean, what a gift, because here I was, this little kid, 12, with a guitar, and I'm kind of like, I don't really want to take guitar lessons. That doesn't sound fun to me. And then I was reading Circus Magazine, which I read religiously back then, and Eddie Van Halen was saying that when he was in school band, he was playing this piece, and the music teacher had said, hey, you're playing that wrong. And Eddie says, well, does it sound cool? The teacher's like, yeah, it sounds cool, but you're playing it wrong. And Eddie was like, well, I'd rather it sound cool than play it right. Whatever that meant at the time, it spoke to me in that, don't go take music lessons. Don't go let somebody else mold you into the musician you want to be. You just take this guitar and you figure it out. And I think, like I said before, I never did master the guitar. I will not dazzle you with a guitar solo. Decent rhythm player, maybe. But all of the songs come through the guitar first, except for occasionally when you wake up from a dream and you have a song in your head that's fully finished and you don't even know where it came from, which is what happened with a song on the new record called Sweet Little Trash. I was having this wonderful dream that it was 1989 and rock music was still being played on the radio. And the DJ says in my dream, here's the new single from Rat. And the song starts, and it's so good that it wakes me up out of my sleep. And usually when this happens, you wake up and you can't remember what you were just hearing. It was cool, but you just can't quite grab it. But in this instance, it was playing in my head like it already existed. The finished chorus, everything, like the full production, I heard it all. And I jumped out of bed and I ran here into my studio, and I jotted enough of it down to where I could remember it and come back and then make it into a full song. But the chorus was already fully there. And it's just a gift from up above, when that happens. um I wish it would happen every day because that song is one of the best songs on the album.
Yeah.
So anyway, Lisa Boo, your mom sounds like an amazing woman, and I'm glad that you were able to witness that.
Yeah. Ozzy, Queen of the Rose, all the way from Australia, um, she basically says that her mum was completely opposite. She was only could do read sheet music.
I'd be up a creek, man. If someone ever called me up and said, "Hey, we need you to do this gig. Um, we need you to read sheet music," I wouldn't be able to do the gig. I don't know how to do that. My brain doesn't want to do that. My brain wants the music to be primal and organic,
Yeah,
and not tied to the rules of musical composition. So
yeah,
that's why I
yeah,
still avoid, maybe at some point I'll dabble into that. But I really like the songs that I'm writing right now. And I think if I did anything to mess with that, I might put out something that sucked. You just never know. But I like where things are at right now. So I want to
yeah,
stay in this moment right now.
yeah. Yeah, thank you, Ozzy, for that.
Thank you.
Oh, and Lisaboo said, "Oh my God, shout at the devil was my first ever record. One of the first records I bought."
I love this because other than the Kiss records, you know, and I believe, you know what, I did have like two Cheap Trick albums before the 1983 metal explosion. Oh, there was Rick Springfield in there too. We cannot forget about Rick Springfield. And maybe that's where I get my love of a good pop rock song, you know. But anyway, yeah, Shout at the Devil was probably, other than Kiss and those couple of albums that I had, was the first metal record I bought. Although
Cool,
Creatures of the Night's a pretty metal record, and that came out the year before, and I did have that.
cool, cool. Thank you, Lisaboo.
Lisa,
Um,
Lisa Boo, we love you, Lisa Boo.
yeah, definitely. So, were you in any bands prior to start the Cyanide?
So many. Oh my goodness. I finally joined my first band in 1986, and we were called Damage. And it was there was this kid at school that I had met. His name was Danny Goldstein. I had no idea we were going to end up being, the best of friends. But I was kind of a jerk in school. I had been picked on a lot, and so I'd kind of just turned into a jerk. And so, you know, when I met Danny, we met under, basically this kid at the lunch table had said, "Hey, dude, I'll give you $5 if you go and ask this kid if he's a boy or a girl." So, yeah, I'll take your $5. And so I go up, and this is how Danny and I meet. I ask him this rude question that's just terrible, and we almost get in a fight, and then a few weeks later, because we didn't get in a fight, a few weeks later we're talking, and he says, "Yeah, man, I got this band." And I'm like, "You don't have no band." "Yeah, man, I play lead guitar." And I'm like, "Shut up, dude. There's no way you play lead guitar." And then he says, "Yeah, man, we just wrote our first original song. We're putting it together right now. It's called Rock and Roll Army, which is on our new album." I resurrected it because he's no longer with us, and I wanted to pay tribute to him. So this song, he sings it to me right there in the cafeteria, the chorus, and I instantly changed my opinion of Danny Goldstein. All of a sudden, I'm like, "Wow, that is a really good chorus." And he's like, "Well, you play drums. Why don't you bring your drums over, and we'll write this song? We'll start a band. I got a couple friends that we're looking for a drummer." Okay. So I bring my drums. Actually, I think I invited them over to my house because I had a garage, and the drums were out there. And so we have our first rehearsal. We have the one song that we're going to work on, Rock and Roll Army. And nobody knows how to tune their instrument. That's how young and inexperienced we were. So we start playing, and we're working through the song, and it just doesn't sound right. And so I thought to myself, and I got up from the drums and I said, guys, I think the guitar and the bass are both supposed to be in the same tuning. Oh, yeah, okay. So that was our first victory. The instruments will now tune together. So then we proceed and we make this song that day. And, we never recorded it. And that band was only together for, 6 months, something like that. So, and that song just faded away into obscurity. And then somewhere around 2015, Danny calls me up because we stayed friends all through. We had many bands together after this first band, Damage. And he calls me up and says he's writing a book, and he wants to ask me if I remember certain things because try to fill in the blanks. And a big part of this book that he's writing is about this song, Rock and Roll Army, right? I hadn't thought about Rock and Roll Army since 1986. And I remember that we never quite finished it. It was cool, but we didn't know how to finish a song back then. And so as we're talking about it, I start thinking about it, and then now I'm hearing it as if it was finished. And so, as me and Danny talked more about this, I kept telling him, you know what? I'm gonna record that song. I'm gonna just for us, just for fun, just so we have it, because it's a shame we never had the ability to record things back then. So I continued to put it off and procrastinate, and then one day, Danny Goldstein was no longer with us, and it was just so many thoughts in my mind at that time. But one of the first ones was, man, I never did record that song for Danny, and so that we could have a laugh, and oh man, weren't we some dumb kids. And so the day after he passed, I come up into my recording studio here, and I'm trying to conjure this song out of memory from 1986 because nobody remembers. None of the other band members remembered any of the parts. And so I was on my own here in the studio, and I could not for the life of me remember, how did this song start? And so I look up at the ceiling, and I'm like, Danny, how the fuck did this song start? And within like 30 seconds, I was playing it. Like, I really believe he sent it down through me. And I recorded that whole song in one afternoon: drums, bass, guitar, vocals. My producer at the time was able to call up Jeff Duncan from Armored Saint to put a guitar solo on it, because it's really just the one thing I can't do. And he puts this amazing solo on it. So, I start thinking, I'm going to send this out to the local radio station, Comp 92.3, because they still have the Homegrown show where they play Las Vegas bands on the radio. I send it to her. She immediately starts playing it on the radio, and I just was so happy because I knew somewhere up there Danny was really just smiling and grinning like, I can't believe this song that these dumb kids wrote back in 86 is on the radio. And then at that point, once I realized people actually liked it, I thought, well, imagine if I put some real effort into this song and really finished it. Like, it really could use some new lyrics. And so I went about reconstructing it for the new album, and now it's on the record. So now I think Danny is really up there looking down proudly, just enjoying that song. And some other bands Danny and I had together, we had this band called Detox, which was a very heavy band, like more along the lines of Slayer and Megadeth, Metallica. We had another band called Dirty McNasty that at the time I always really felt like it was heavily influenced by Skid Row. And gosh, what are some other bands I was in? I was in a band called Angel Park. In all these bands, I was a drummer in, by the way. I was not a singer in any of these bands. This band, Angel Park, that I was put in touch with somewhere around 1999, when music was just, to me, was in a really bad state. And there was just really nothing I liked that was popular anymore. And somebody handed me this demo tape of Angel Park, and I put it in, and it's like, man, it's these guys sound like Kiss. This is right up my alley. And they need a drummer that sings. I was always the drummer that sings. I would always bring good backing vocals to the mix. And that's kind of why I would secretly wish I could be the singer. I don't know why I didn't. In the 80s, to be a lead singer, you kind of were required to be tall and thin. And I was certainly not extremely tall, and I was definitely not thin. And so I just stayed behind my drums, and I was happy to do that. But, you know, um, some other bands I was in, man. I know there's a few. Well, my when I first joined the Iron Maiden tribute band in I think it was 2009, that's when I decided to be a singer. And the reason I decided that I was going to do it then was A, my age, B, I was looking through the Sally Steele Vegas Rocks magazine that was an institution here in town. Sally ran that magazine for years and years, and it's still going. And in the back pages was an ad for an Iron Maiden tribute band looking for Bruce Dickinson. And I'm like, well, I drive around in my car singing Bruce Dickinson all the time. This sounds like what I'm meant to do. And so I set up an audition thinking, well, this will be fun. At least I'll get to have played with some dudes that can play Iron Maiden music, and that'll be enough. But then they picked me, and I was like, oh shit, I guess I'm really doing this now, aren't I? And at that point realized that I wasn't really capable of singing more than 7 or 8 songs before my throat got tired. So it took me some time to be able to sing 2 hours of Bruce Dickinson and Paul Di'Anno. Um, but I did eventually get there. And so Aces High was my first band as a singer. And it morphed into Children of the Damned, which has now morphed into Flight 666, which is the Iron Maiden tribute band we currently have. And, we've got Red Hot, the Motley Crue tribute. We've got Play Dirty, the Poison tribute. And so we've got 4 bands running, here in town right now, and it helps keep us busy. And sometimes we're able to book, like Friday night, we booked Cyanide, Play Dirty, and Red Hot all in the same night. And, that was a fun night, just being able to do all 3 of them in one night. I went, it was kind of brutal on the throat. So I don't know that we'll be doing that very often, but it was certainly fun to do that night. And man, I know there's some other bands that I was in back in the day that I'm forgetting. Oh, Bloodshot. I had this band called Bloodshot from 2002 to 2005, and another heavier band, Pantera-ish, Slayer-ish. But I was drumming in that band, so definitely a lot of it was like Slayer and Pantera, but with Tommy Lee drumming, because that's really my drum style. Is I just love Tommy Lee's drum style. And we did pretty well, even though we released this album called Demons, Addictions, and Confidence, and it's actually out there on Spotify, but the production is terrible. I produced it, and aside from not being able to play lead guitar, also another thing I should not do is produce a record. I can co-produce a record, but I do not understand the science of the EQ and everything and how you make all of the sounds exist together and sound right. So if you ever go check out that Bloodshot record, you'll notice the production is lacking. The songs are good though. We didn't have guitar solos in that band, which I regret now. But yeah, that's all the bands I can think of.
Cool. Um, we've got a couple of questions from the chat. Lisaboo says, "Do you ever do any original songs or just tribute content?"
I actually only do the tributes so that people will actually care and listen to my original music. So Cyanide is an all original band. We've got 2 records out right now. This is our first record, Cyanide Lethal Dose. This is a straight up 1987 Sunset Strip party album. It's got Motley Crue, Rat, Van Halen, Guns N' Roses influences all over it. Um, I initially made that record because Saints of Los Angeles had just come out, and Motley Crue had said they weren't going to release any more new albums, which was very, very upsetting to me because new Motley Crue albums are one of the things I love most in life. So I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to try to make one, with those influences. Because I had never really had the opportunity to do what I wanted to do musically. I was always the drummer. I was always kind of playing songs someone else wrote. And I was just being the team guy and doing what the drummer's supposed to do. So when I got the chance to do the first Cyanide album, I was so stoked. It was me and the guitar player of the Iron Maiden tribute band, Mark Mersal. Him and I had Nikki Six in Disguise and Pump It To Me, songs off that ended up being on the first record. I had those already in full demos, just with no guitar solos. And so when I was at Mark's house, we were rehearsing Iron Maiden stuff. I ended up playing him Nikki Six in Disguise and Pump It To Me. And he's like, oh, listen to these. And he plays me two of his demos, which are fully realized songs just without vocals. And we just instantly, we were like, you know what? We should make a record. A casual decision. We're not going to put a band together or anything. We're just going to write some songs, have some fun. Well, once we had like 5 songs, kind of looked at each other and said, let's just do a whole record. And then once we got the record done, it was like, if we don't go play these songs live, we're a couple of idiots. This is really good stuff. So we put out the record. It was distributed through Demon Doll Records, and it did really well here in town. And we were able to open for a lot of my favorite bands: Skid Row, Stephen Pearcy, Steel Panther, Crocus, Loudness, Doro Pesh, Lynch Mob, Enough's Enough. We got to open for all these bands that I grew up just being in love with from that first record. And then, of course, right as we were getting ready to get serious about putting out the new album in 2020, COVID happened, and the band fell apart. And suddenly I didn't think I was going to play music anymore. I went through a really dark time, and at some point I started to recover, and I had gone a year without even touching a guitar. And I came up here one day and I thought to myself, do I really think I can finish writing this album by myself? Because I only had 3 songs at that point, and the prospect of coming up with 9 more songs seemed like insurmountable. But little by little, I just started writing and putting into words what I had been going through, what the world had been going through. I decided along the way I wanted to put a few heavier songs on here just because of how dark I was feeling. And so I worked and worked and worked. And then finally in 2022, I was able to start recording the album. I found an amazing producer. We started tracking. That process took about 2 years. So now we're at 2024. It's now 9 years since the first album came out. And I'm just like, who does that, But it was really coming together. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just make sure I never let this happen again, but I'm going to get this album out. And then once it was really starting to take shape in very similar fashion to the first record, man, if I don't put together a band and go play these songs live, I'm an idiot. These songs are really good. And so at that point, I decided I'd find the right band. And so right around April of 2024, I lost my producer. We had a falling out, and, he left the project. And I was then left with the task of finding a new producer, who ended up being Ty Sims. Ty Sims, the first question he asked me is, what do you want your record to sound like? And I said, well, I'm a huge fan of the Bob Rock drum sound. I love Dr. Feelgood and the Metallica Black album. Sonically, I would like to marry those two sounds together into one cohesive album where it's like half glam rock, half metal, and a couple of ballads. And so with that, we end up with this 21 Gun Salute album, 12 songs, 11 originals. There's one cover on this record. It is the Climax Blues Band classic, I Love You. And that song ended up on the record because I had another ballad that I was working on. And about 4 months into working on it, I still had no vocals. I had nothing, no melody, no nothing. I finally got an idea one day and I started running with it and I'm singing it and I'm laying it down and suddenly I realized, man, this reminds me of someone else's song, but I can't place it. I always thought Elton John sang this song. It was really popular. It was a number one song when I was a little kid, and I always thought it was Elton John, but it turns out it's Climax Blues Band. And so when I finally found the song and heard it again for the first time since I was a kid, I said, Shh, I'm going to put this on the record too. And so that's how I ended up with two ballads. It was a complete accident. There was really only going to be 11 songs. But once I came across that song, I knew I just had to record it, and it came out really good. And so the new album here, 21 Gun Salute, it was released by Kivel Records a few months back on CD. It is still available on kivelrecords.com/store. That's where you can buy the physical CD and at our shows. And October 17th, the full album will be streaming for the first time. I've been releasing a brand new single every Friday since 4 or 5 weeks ago. And so we've now put out 5 singles. There's one more single coming this next Friday. It's a new song called Social Media Disease. It's the heaviest song on the record. It really brings out my Metallica influences, my Anthrax and my Slayer. And yeah, it's coming out this Friday. Social Media Disease is about the internet trolls out there that just don't have anything better to do with their lives but mess with people on the internet. I really hate when I see it. I really just I call it social media disease. I think a lot of other people do too. And I just really felt like I wanted to say something about that. So that's what that song is for, to support and let the people know who actually are, you know, getting mentally damaged from perhaps abuse that they receive on the internet to, stand up and do something about it. And you're not alone. And so that's what that song's about. And it's coming out this coming Friday. This past Friday, I put out a single called Back the Fuck Off, which I wrote during the darkest time that I was talking about, 2020, 2021. The job I had at the time had gone really, really sour during COVID. And they were just treating us horribly and just trying to do everything they could do to make us quit our jobs. And it really went above and beyond the level of decency as far as I was concerned. But I couldn't do anything about it. And so I had to just take it. But in my mind, I was like, I sure would love to tell this dude to back the fuck off. And that turned into a song. And it's a very angry, aggressive song. And I think a little bit of my Pantera and my Guns N' Roses influence comes out on this song. But yeah, that's where I'm at with the original music. That was a very long answer, but thank you, Lisaboo, for asking.
Thank you, Lisa, for that. Got a question from Ozzy. Ozzy Ann, keep calling it Ozzy Ann, but Ozzy Queen. What is your favourite song of the band?
You know, I think a lot of songwriters would agree with this. When you write songs, it's like they're your little kids. And it's really hard sometimes to say you like one better than the other. And And for me, all the songs are very personal, so it changes. You know, throughout the making of this record, at some point, each of the 12 songs at the moment was my favorite song. And then it would change, and then so. But now that I've had several months to reflect on the record since I finished it, if I really had to pick a favorite song, wow, that is tough. I think Slip and Slide and Sweet Little Trash, um, because even though my metal influences are on full display on this record, and that's Social Media Disease, As the World Burns, Take What You Want, Fireball, who Oz Fox from Striper came in and put this blazing guitar solo down on, and he's also on Social Media Disease, actually. Great guitar solos that Oz put on the record, classic Oz. And man, I'm gonna have to say Slip and Slide, Sweet Little Trash, because they're so sleazy and dirty and gritty, like 1987, and that whole vibe. Um, I just always loved. So maybe just a tad bit more than the heavier metal, but it's almost equal. So right now at this point, I'm gonna say Slip and Slide and Sweet Little Trash are the two that I would. If somebody was gonna say what two songs should I go listen to on your record right now, I would start with those two.
Cool, cool, cool. Thank you for that, Ozzy. So, are you writing any new material for a new album?
I was determined, because it took 10 years to get the new album out between that and the first album. I was determined that that's never going to happen again. It's never going to be more than 2 or 3 years between records again. And, I already have three more records in the planning stages, um, because what I really want to do is I want to create the passion and the vibe and the feeling that we all got when we could go to the record store and pick up that new Kiss album or that new Iron Maiden album, that new Motley Crue album, back in the 80s, when we would go to the record store on the day of release, and maybe sometimes at midnight the night before, or wait in line for albums like, Use Your Illusion and the Black album, remember waiting in line for those. So yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. So, is there any plans of releasing merchandise for the new album?
I do have t-shirts. I've got buttons, patches, stickers. I've got Cyanide t-shirts. I've got Red Hot Motley Crue tribute t-shirts, Flight 666 Iron Maiden t-shirts. I've got like two giant tubs full of merch right now, but I've only been selling it at shows. Um, but I guess, at this point, I'm going to finally figure out how to build my online store so that I can, sell them online, because it appears now that there are a lot of people that don't live here in Vegas that would like a Cyanide shirt. And so right now I only have one design in men's and women's sizes, but I plan on making a few now, because it's, at all our shows we've been selling merchandise like gangbusters. So
Yeah,
thank you,
yeah,
thank you all,
yeah.
anyone who's you know purchased a CD or a T-shirt. I love. Some people purchase a CD, and as they're buying it, they're like, I don't even have a CD player. I just want this. And it's funny. A lot of people didn't realize, if you have a Blu-ray player hooked up to your TV or a DVD player, you can play CDs in those, and it'll come out through your stereo system that's hooked up to your TV, and it'll sound amazing. I
Yeah.
do
Or
it
you,
sometimes when
yeah,
I do stream a lot of music, but I still buy I always buy the CD, and then if I really love the record, then I buy the vinyl. But I'll mostly stream it when I'm at home, because I'm the gift that keeps on giving. I'm gonna buy your album, and then I'm gonna stream it so that you can keep, you know, earning a little money there. And you know, that's what this new thing on streaming is super fans. You know, you get these fans that love your music so much that they'll just put your album on and leave it on repeat and just always be listening
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
And man, thank you, because apparently we have several of those, and it's man, it's a shame that when your streaming numbers come to you that you can't tell who it was so you could thank them. But I would just thank anybody out there that opens their Spotify or their Apple Music or their Amazon Music or whatever it is that
Yeah.
you use, and you play Cyanide. And if you play it a lot and leave it on repeat, man, that's the best gift you could give a guy like me, because
Yeah.
CD sales being what they are, you're just not going to ever move as many copies as you once could have. And so the only
Yeah.
way that you can keep earning some money is even though it's not a lot, is through the streaming. And I appreciate each and every one of you that turns on those Cyanide songs every day, and it's very cool.
Cool. We've got, speaking of vinyl, is there any plans on putting new music out on vinyl?
It's absolutely. I wanted to release it on vinyl with the CD, but financially it just it wasn't feasible. And so now that the CD's been out for a while, and we've moved some merchandise, there is now some money there to do a vinyl pressing. So what I've just got to do is figure out, and if anybody out there knows and wants to help out, I would love to know who the best place is to go through to do that. And because I don't expect that any of my fans are going to want to pay $40 for a vinyl. I want to find a way to that's going to make it reasonable. Where you can get the vinyl for maybe 20, 25 bucks, because that's what I like to pay for a slab of wax. And so
Yeah.
that's what I'd like to give. My shirts are $20. You go to
Yeah.
concerts now, shirts are $55. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going to take advantage of anyone like that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, uh, definitely going to do a vinyl pressing, hopefully of both records. That is really what I'd love to do, is do maybe a double album with both of them.
Cool.
Uh,
Cool.
maybe the 21 Gun Salute covers on the front and the Lisa Dose covers on the back, and then when you open it, there's pictures from both. I don't know,
Yeah.
but that seems like when you do a double vinyl, you can sometimes find a way to get those out the door for like $30. And I would definitely pay $30 for a double vinyl, because most of them are 50, 60. So that's my main goal, is like, I want to do all this stuff, but I also don't want people to have to pay ridiculous prices for them. So
Yeah.
international
Yeah.
shipping is going to be very tricky, though. I've heard that it's very
Yeah.
expensive to ship
It
stuff.
is. It is.
What I think what I need to do is, I'm sure this must exist. There is a print on demand vinyl company, um, that will ship it out, and they'll handle the international shipping, because they probably get huge discounts, all that stuff. So I just want to make sure that it's affordable for people, because money's tight for a lot of us
Yeah.
right
Yeah. It is. I'm going to ask. Lisaboo's got a question. Whilst you answer the question, I just need to nip off to do something. I'll be right back.
now. Okay.
But the question is, do you have a favorite venue that the band plays at?
Well, I did. My home for the last, gosh, I want to say since 2011, a lot of my shows took place at Counts Vamped here in Las Vegas, owned by my good friend Danny Coker of Count 77 and Counting Cars fame, also the owner of Count 77, and his wife Corey Coker, um, has been kind enough to book my band over and over the years. It's over a decade now, and we had the best times of our life at Counts Vamped. All of my bands have played there. Um, we finally reached headlining status, about a year ago. And unfortunately, the club is now closed. So we've all the bands here in Vegas that, let's be honest, we all love Counts Vamped. We all miss Counts Vamped. Um, Corey's out there booking shows now under Motor Mouth Productions, and it's called Vamped Beyond. And so right now there's just only a limited amount of shows that she can book. So the answer to the question though is Counts Vamped. Even though it's no longer here, that will always be my favorite venue that the band played at. Hands
Another,
it's not
yeah,
even. It's not even. And I love all the places we played at. Don't get me wrong. House of Blues is a great place to play. Counts Vamped is just right here. The people, the staff, Corey and Danny, so many people that have been there the whole time I've been playing there. I just love them all. And so, yeah, the answer to that question is Counts Vamped.
yeah. And another side to that, to the question: have you got a dream venue?
A what?
A dream venue to play at?
Oh, man. There's so many. But what would be, if you could pick any? I mean, doesn't everybody want to headline Madison Square Garden? I mean, that would that would be one of them. I would say, um, my God, imagine if you could go back in time and headline some of the legendary venues too. So, but I would have to say, yeah, headlining Madison Square Garden. Although that's certainly never going to happen, uh, but that would be what I would pick if I was able to.
Cool, cool. Is there any plans on doing any sort of like tours, whether it be in the US or further afield?
If the demand is ever there, that it could be, financially even to be able to be considered, I would jump on that in a second. If that ever comes to be, I will be all over it. Right now, there are no plans because even big bands are struggling out there touring um, to just break even. You know, and in a band like us, we wouldn't be able to survive. Going out there and probably paying out of pocket to tour. It would be tough as much as I'd love to do it. But, I keep hoping because people keep telling me this record, people keep saying that this record sounds like arena headlining rock and that it should be being played in those types of venues. And just the fact that anybody even thinks that is so humbling. And, you know, but I can't help but think in the back of my mind, yeah, wouldn't that be amazing? If the right person heard this band and felt that way about it, they'd be able to make something like that happen. Maybe not on that level, but at least a nice, comfortable tour where everyone wasn't losing money, because it always just comes down to that, doesn't it? And so, you know, I never say never, man. I would do it if the opportunity comes about.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
since we can't, um, what I really wanted to do, unless the opportunity comes that we can, but until then, my plan was to put on like one really amazing concert with songs from the first album, the second album, some cool covers, because that's what we did at our album release party. We did a 3-hour show at our album release party back in June. And, it was the whole new record. And then it was like Metallica, Queensryche, uh, Van Halen, Rat. We did a huge set of Kiss stuff, amazing Kiss stuff with the Kiss Night in Las Vegas group, Stoney and Barry and Keith Robert. And man, what a what a night that was. Carl Chiadella from One Last Kiss joined us on drums. I got on the drums, played a couple. I played Deuce and Strutter on drums and sang them. and that's always fun. I mean, that's for me, that's a good time. Like I would just do that for fun. And my goodness, man, we had a time that night. We did some Ghost, we did some Rob Zombie. Uh, gosh, what else did we do? So much. 3 hours, 3 hours of stuff. And before I did it, I was like, how on earth am I going to sing for 3 hours? But we got through it, and it was a great show. And I think we'll be wanting to put something like that on again very soon.
Cool. So if there was financial backing and everything's aligned, would you sort of like go over, come over to the UK,
Yeah,
Europe, down into Australia, or up into Canada?
absolutely. In fact, I was just looking at my streaming numbers this morning, and London is the number one streamer of Cyanide music out of all the cities in the world. More people in London are playing the Cyanide music than any other city in any country. And
Cool.
I was really shocked to see that. In fact, the top 10 countries that are playing Cyanide music the most, they're all overseas. Um, I don't think the first American city is on there until like number 18 or something. So I would think if we were going to do a tour, if there was financial backing and anyone ever really did want to help make that happen, it probably would be the best way to make some noise and get the most amount of people to see us, and then maybe that could lead to a pretty sweet US tour. you know
Cool. Cool.
make it so, universe.
Um, got a couple of questions, a couple of comments. Ozzy has said it is expensive to travel. It's going to be so much when I get to visit the UK in 2027. So, but it's so worth it.
Absolutely, it
Yeah.
is worth it when you can make it happen. Oh, God, it would be the best. I mean, I would think a Cyanide tour of all the countries that you just mentioned. I mean, what more could one ask for it at this point in time? A few years ago, I didn't even think I'd ever play music again, and then now all this is going on. So you just never know. Maybe it could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And Lisaboo says you have a new follower.
Oh, Lisa Boo, thank you so much. We could not appreciate that anymore. Thank you.
Um, so, where can people find you on social media?
So we have an official website. It's cyaniderocks.com, all lowercase. Um, on that website is Cyanide, Red Hot, Motley Crue tribute, Play Dirty Poison tribute, Flight 666 Iron Maiden tribute. So we've got all four bands have their own page on the cyaniderocks.com website. And each of those pages has links to all the socials, all the videos. Um, the Cyanide portion has, the new singles that have been released so far off the new album, um, the videos that have been made, and links to all the socials, the Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok. um, it's funny, I never was going to join Instagram or TikTok. I refused. I was like, I can barely manage these Facebook profiles, and the X, I had that. And then when I went to release the album, it was a requirement. You have to create an artist page on TikTok and Instagram. And so since I had to, I did. And now I found that, man, I wish I would have done it sooner. So yeah, we're on all of them now. Cyanide is. And then the tribute bands are all on the cyaniderocks.com website.
Cool. Cool. So, guys in the chat, we're going to be starting to wrap things up in the next 5-10 minutes or so. If you've got any final questions, please ask away. So, Rob, um, any advice for people who want to become a musician, whether it's for their own personal pleasure or possibly going down the commercial route?
So many pieces of advice. The first piece of advice I would give is don't play any music that you don't believe in 1000%. You know, don't chase trends. Don't just be you. Do what you love. If you're doing what you love, people can tell. If I had used AI to make this stuff and it wasn't coming from here, um, you know, people would know. And so, when I'm writing songs, I really just try to keep what's in here coming out there. So I would say that. I would say don't get in it for the money or fame or any of those things. It has to be for the love of the music you're playing, which is why I say don't play music you don't love. I would also say um, at a very young age, if you start educating yourself about the business side of this business, um, you will only be able to help yourself. And now, of course, you need to be a social media whiz and a video editing whiz, and a if you can produce your own music, you're way ahead of the game. Um, I would say if you're a serious rock band trying to do what you love, I would say if you're going to use AI at all, make sure it's minimal. Don't use it to create your songs. Um, I know there's going to be a whole market for AI created music, and it's already a big divisive thing among us musicians. So do what's coming from your heart. Don't do it for the money. Um, Learn about the business. Gosh, there must be so much. Oh, the one thing I would go back and tell myself, if I could go back and tell my 15 or 14-year-old self, you know, if you really want to be a singer, don't be a drummer. If you really want to be a drummer, don't be a singer. I would go back and just be a singer from the very beginning, because that is really what I was supposed to have been doing. Drumming was just keeping me in the game, but I would say make sure you're doing exactly what you want to be doing and not what someone else wants you to be doing.
Yeah, sound advice there. Sound advice. Um, yeah, we've got a couple of comments. Lisaboo says, "Thank you so much, Rob, for coming on." Um, Ozzy says, "Thanks so much for coming on, Rob. Yeah, you were awesome."
Thank you
And
for
Ozzy also says,
and for
"Sound
all of you.
advice."
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. So, Rob, we're going to be starting to wrap things up. So, have you sort of like got any final words before we go?
I would love for anybody and everybody that sees this to just go to our website and just give those songs a listen. Give them a few listens. Maybe give each song 5 listens. Let them grow on you and see how they make you feel at cyaniderocks.com. Um, because that is, if enough people do that, this touring we're talking about could actually be something that could be considered. So, I would ask anybody to just give our music a chance. If you love Motley Crue and Kiss and Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and Metallica and Rat and Van Halen and all that stuff, I mean, those are the bands that I get my inspiration from, among many others. But you know, at the end of the day, I want to make music that honors the legacy that those bands have created. Um, because it occurred to me in the last few years that at some point all of those bands that are so dear to my heart, they're not going to be out there playing anymore, and possibly not releasing any more new music. And so I just want to give people something that could make them feel like that again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's over the last good few years. There's been quite a few people, quite a few of the big names have either retired or who are sadly no longer with us.
right? I mean, it's and you know, I posted this in 2018 on my Facebook page, um, but the post said, "Man, these next 10 years are going to be really brutal. The amount of bands and musicians that we all love so much, either retiring or you know no longer being with us, and so let's, instead of everybody getting on the internet every day and criticizing this guy or that guy because they don't do what they did in 1983. Well, you're not doing what you did in 1983 either. They're out there doing the only thing that they know how to do to make a living, and people still want to see them, and they're going to show up and support them. So stop hating on these guys and appreciate them while they're still doing it for us. Like, I just went to the Motley Crue residency at in Vegas here. I got to see two shows, and I could not believe the amount of venom that gets spewed at Motley Crue online. And just the cold things people say about him. And it's like, I went to the show. Um, I didn't even know what to expect because all I was hearing was that it may or may not be a train wreck. And so, I'm in my mind, I'm on my way there thinking, man, I hope they just show it. Fuck them. And God, they did. That show reminded me why I love Motley Crue so much. It was so much of being proud and, you know, just happy for them, that because as I was watching the show, I knew people are going to like this. There's not many people that are going to be able to go online and say something crappy about this, and so, and it was a friend of ours, Lana, that had given us free tickets. And so that's how we ended up at the show. But it was so good, we went back, and we were like, we want to see it, up close. So we went and bought some nice seats, and then um, this very kind usher, uh, he allowed us to go up to the second row because it was there were some people that were supposed to be in these couple seats that weren't there, and I guess my lady Melissa had told the usher how much I love Motley Crue and what it would mean to me if I could see that. And so, yeah, he let us go up to the second row, and my God, I haven't been that close at a Motley Crue show since the Karabi show. Um, I saw that show from the front row at the Palladium in Hollywood, and so, man, being that close to them and seeing how good they were doing and how happy they looked, and it was a really good show. And so, yeah, I just thought I'd have to throw that all out there, man. Stop hating on musicians.
Yeah, definitely,
They're doing the
definitely.
best they can. That's all you can ask.
Yeah. So, Rob, we're going to start wrapping things up there. So, thank you so much for coming on and doing this little interview. It's
Thank you.
been an absolute blast.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate it. And I also had a great time. And thank you to Lisa Poo and Aussie Roo. Is it Aussie Roo?
Aussie, yeah, Aussie Queen of the Roos. Uh,
Queen of the Roo. Nice. Yeah, thank you for the questions and the comments. And thank you to anybody out there that watched or listened. And, thank you in advance if you want to head over and listen to our music. Full album streaming on October 17th everywhere. There's 5 singles out right now off the new record. There'll be another one next Friday. And then after that, the following week, the full album will be available.
Cool, cool. So, guys, if you haven't checked out Cyanide, please do. I've put all the links down in the description, and I know Lisa and Ozzy have been posting them out into in the live chat there. So, yeah, this guy's the band is absolutely amazing. Rob's absolutely amazing. So go check them out. Go check them out.
Well, I
So,
just really appreciate all that. Thank you. You're too
yeah,
kind.
my pleasure. My pleasure. So, guys, until next time, we'll catch you all later.